Out on the channel, where Muskegon Lake meets Lake Michigan, a steel giant rests in the water. Narrow passageways, bunks stacked like sardine tins, the lingering smell of oil. A war machine once veered across the Pacific now lies quiet, waiting for visitors to step inside and hear her stories. Meet Tom Johnson, a man who has dedicated years to keeping her history alive. He's not just giving tours, he's sharing the stories of the men who once called this submarine home. And I'm on a mission to hear those stories. My name is Cliff Duvenois, and we are Total Michigan.
Well, it's a museum in Muskegon, as you said. We're out here on the channel between Muskegon Lake and Lake Michigan. It started out actually as a general kind of ship museum. She's a World War II submarine, famous for being the #3 boat out in the Pacific. That's as far as sinkings go. And the museum itself is somewhat dedicated towards World War II, what happened. And then there's a lot about ships, of course, but there's a lot about armies and general, things about POWs, nurses, all sorts of different things inside the museum. We're in the control room now. Up the ladder, there's in the conning tower. There's another wheel up there. The main wheel is right here. This is an interesting job. Can you imagine standing here all day and all you're told is what to do? 10 degrees to port, 10 degrees to starboard. You can't see a thing. There's not even a video camera. Like the modern submarines have the same problem underwater, but they have better systems of sonar and stuff like that. But this is it, You just wait for somebody to tell you what to do and look at the compass. You've ever heard of the phrase, 10 degrees down bubble, or at the submarine movie, here's the bubble. It's a little bubble inside this liquid, and there's different degrees here. They also have a port and starboard bubble set over here. So 10 degrees down bubble is ordered, that's what you do.
But the Silversides isn't just a collection of dates and statistics. In the brutal reality of war, life aboard meant danger, ingenuity, and raw survival. On one patrol, the crew faced a medical crisis that tested their courage in the most unexpected way.
They had an appendectomy surgery performed on this table by the pharmacist mate. This guy had what turned out to be appendicitis. They were out on a run. It was the 4th War Patrol. His name was George Platter. And the pharmacist mate, is not allowed to do anything but, the basic stuff.
Correct, yes.
But a pharmacist, they basically went to the captain. We're not near any capital ships that might have an operating room or land. So the captain basically said to the pharmacist mate, well, can you help this guy? And he says, well, I've seen it, the appendectomy performed before, and I've got a book. And so, there's rumors of taking a butter knife and sharpening it in one of the shop's wheel, and using spoons for forceps and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, man.
And they had I think they had something to shoot him up with to knock him out. They submerged the boat underwater because it's, smooth underwater.
Right.
And did the surgery.
Right.
It was successful. Apparently they were attacked a little while later, and the gentleman who was in his bunk recuperating fell out of his bunk, but they got him back, and he, got out of the service later on. He 3 or 4 more war patrols, and then he ended up dying of old age. So we're in the forward torpedo room. These boats had 24 total torpedoes on board, 16 in the forward end and 8 in the rear. Here there are 6 tubes, 2 below the deck, 2 in the middle, and 2 on top, and yet guys could still sleep here. Now to get all those torpedoes, 1 in each tube, that's getting rid of 6. 1 under there, 1 under there, 1 on this level, 1 on this level, 2 below me for the lower tubes. And then they connected these pieces of iron across here and made kind of a railroad track between the ones back there, and they could slide these skids backwards and forwards. So to get the rest, they left 2 on this level, and then there'd be 2 on the floor level. So these guys had to climb over to get to their bunks. So it was a pretty crowded until they started getting rid of torpedoes.
Stories like the emergency surgery reveal the ingenuity of the Silversides crew. But submarines are meant to be submerged. And in war, that meant facing the relentless terror of depth charges from above, explosions that could turn the submarine into a coffin.
There's one story that always sticks in my mind, and I wasn't the tour guide at the time, but one of the tour guides told me that they were going through the boat, and there was a gentleman who served on a similar boat, not this one, and he when they were in the cruise area, sat down on, he said, this would have been my bunk. And he was sitting there, and then the guide was talking, and he said, after a point, he looked over, and there were tears rolling down this gentleman's face. And she said, well, are you all right? And he said, I sat here through, maybe 75 depth charges. And it's like a shotgun going off next to your head. And they survived, obviously, because he's there. But it just triggered that memory for him just being in the boat, maybe smelling the boat.
Yes.
See, people talk about the smell of this boat. Welcome to the forward engine room. We've got 2 Fairbanks Morse diesels here. The ones I talked about with 9 cylinders, 18 piston. Air intakes right here. So again, this type of boat, in order to breathe, had to be on the surface. These engines only provided electricity to be stored in the batteries through generators. It wasn't a direct drive system from these. So if you lost one, you just had one less for charging the batteries. This boat was taken down to the bottom of the Mississippi River. She was put on a barge and brought up there to the Illinois and into Chicago to then, the naval base in North Chicago. So she could be used as a training vessel. Somewhere in 1969, she was decommissioned. So she spent some time on the pier, the Navy pier, both sides, other sides, moved over to the Industrial Museum, moved back, moved around a lot. And then eventually in the mid-'80s, the city was kind of like, can you get this thing out of here? And there is kind of a thing. Does the Navy still own her? In 1987, I think that was about the end of the road for her down there. People up here offered to have her come up here. She was towed up to Muskegon. She spent most of her time here in her space now. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it started, about 1987. So she's been here ever since. And so many people see signs out on the roads, places saying submarine. And they're like, what? Why? And they follow the signs and they walk in the building and they go, there's a submarine here. Yeah, we're right off of Pier Marquette Beach, which is a beautiful beach.
It is.
Been voted #1 beach in Michigan several times. And Facebook, where we have a good Facebook. When I first got here about 8 years ago, and they told me we have 29,000 subscribers on Facebook, I was like, holy moly. I didn't expect anywhere near that.
Right.
Okay. And we have a regular website, we can give you the information. You could post it. It's down here. Is that what they do?
I think they say it's down here.
Post for
The USS Silversides is more than steel and rivets. She's a living reminder of the men who braved the ocean depths in a time of war. Today, she rests in Muskegon, not just as a museum, but as part of a greater tribute, a place where families connect with history and where the service and sacrifice of all who wore the uniform are remembered. An enduring legacy of America's true heroes. My name is Cliff Dubenois, and we are Total Michigan.